Hello, everyone. I am back. Listen, the tailgate is going to continue going. Okay. We are with our third candidate for today. I am absolutely excited because this is my first time meeting you and sitting down with you. So, I'm just going to let it all out. Okay. Um, I am I am Jennifer Kennedy. You all, this is IBA Success Tailgate interview. I am sitting one on one with Temika Hampton-Johnson. Okay, before we jump into the interview, let's give our sponsor again a thank you for making this possible. Thank you, Southern Style Barbecue, for sponsoring this opportunity for each candidate to come and sit with us and tell us about their passion, their dreams, and their goals for serving the community. So, because this is my first time meeting you, I want my audience to know who are you? Who are you and what can they take away from your name, Temika Hampton Johnson?
Uh, who am I? Well, I am Temika Hampton-Johnson, born and raised in a little town called Stark, Florida.
Okay,
Um, in Stark, the Florida Department of Corrections is the primary employer
okay,
because there are a lot of prisons within a small radius there. And so growing up there, they say you either work for the prison or you go to prison. That's how
okay,
it goes. But I had some other plans, and thanks to my faith in my family, I'm here.
okay,
I joined the Army Reserve. I served as a military police officer. That afforded me the opportunity to attend Stetson University, where I obtained my bachelor's degree and my MBA.
okay,
And then a few years later, at the age of 30, I decided I needed to go to law school because I wanted to be a judge. In
okay,
order to be a judge, you have to be a lawyer first.
okay,
You have to be a lawyer for at least 5 years. And so I went to law school right here at FAMU College of Law, right here in downtown
all
Orlando.
right,
In the evening, while working full time for the state of Florida as a probation officer, after I graduated from law school, I started as a public defender, representing those who are accused of crimes who can't afford an attorney.
that's
You
right,
know,
okay,
but they still need their constitutional rights defended,
yes,
no matter the offense. And so that started. That kind of continued my public service, and from there I did a lot of work with the unions, Orange County Public School. We were just talking
okay,
earlier about the teachers and their support staff, and
okay,
so I worked there representing them as their advocate in disciplinary matters, contract violations. For 5 years, I served as general counsel and the chief negotiator for the classified unions. So those are your bus drivers, your custodians,
okay,
maintenance individuals, and just negotiating their working conditions, their pay, um, fighting for them in arbitrations, fighting for them as it pertains to legislation
okay,
and funding.
okay.
And
So you've been
so
fighting.
I've been
You
fighting.
have been
I've been
fighting.
fighting.
So you are a
Yes.
wife, you're a mother,
Yes.
you're a grandmother.
Yes.
How have those roles changed the way you look at people, mistakes, consequences, second chances?
I think I've always looked at people as we're human. We all do
Okay.
the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being a GG has, they say, has made me much softer. But I
Okay.
think I've always just looked at people as, but by the grace of God,
Uh-huh.
I could have been
Yes.
in a lot of those positions, especially as a probation officer early in my career. Individuals who wrote a check on Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
expecting the money to be there Friday,
Ooh, we know about
and
that.
something didn't work out,
Yes.
and then you know
We
it
got a
just
bounce check.
right, and then it just kept trickling because he
Right.
couldn't pay it and couldn't pay it, and then they end up on probation.
Right.
But by the grace of God, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think I've always had a level of empathy for people in that way. I'm also strong, and I believe in accountability as well,
Okay.
and that's something I explain to my children. You have to be accountable for your actions and the
Mm-hmm.
things that you do, and so it's a nice balance between the two, like
Mm-hmm.
the empathy, but there's also a level of accountability that
Mm-hmm.
goes with it.
And you're running for a judge seat, so you have to have both of those at a balance. A lot of voters really don't even understand what the circuit judge actually does. Before we can even talk about why you should be elected, educate us. What does the Ninth Judicial Circuit Judge really do?
Okay, so circuit court judges, there's a difference between county versus circuit. County would be specific to Orange County, so they
Okay,
only work in Orange County. Circuit court judge, which is what I'm running for, covers Orange and Osceola because it's the Ninth Circuit.
okay,
So the chief judge decides whether you're going to be in Orange County or Osceola County. And then as far as what areas they cover, county court does your misdemeanors, your civil cases that are less than 50,000, landlord tenant matters. Then when you get to circuit, you're looking at your criminal felony cases, your
Okay.
civil cases over 50,000, probate, family law.
Okay.
You don't necessarily run for a specific position because it's going to be where that chief judge assigns you. So
Okay.
you may have a ton of civil experience and then they put you in criminal.
Okay.
So I think that's what makes me the most qualified in my race because I do have that diverse background in all areas as well.
You know, people hear judicial temperament.
Mhm.
What does that mean in plain English? And what should voters look for when they're choosing a judge?
So judicial temperament is how do you handle times of stress?
Okay.
How do you handle things that you may not personally like or you have a personal feeling or opinion about? And as a judge, you don't get to react. Your job is not to come in and bring your personal beliefs, your political beliefs. Your job is to hear the facts of the case, look at the law, make a decision. So it's a lot of taking the emotion out of business when you're looking at it from that angle, and just also understanding the law is the law. However, there is a human factor. For example, an example I like to give is if a father loses his driver's license in criminal court, it impacts his ability to pay child support in family court.
Right.
Those things are connected. And so I think when you're making a decision as a judge, you have to think about those two things. And sometimes your hands are tied.
Right.
If it's a DUI or something to that effect, your driver's license is going to be suspended. That is the consequence of the action. But if there's a way that maybe there's an option to do community service, so your driver's license is not suspended, so now you have the ability to go to work, pay child support in that family case. So it's a balancing act of the law is the law, but also remembering there's a human factor.
Yes, I see you are very human because you have a very impressive background. You've been a military police officer, um, probation and parole officer, public defender, family lawyer, labor attorney, mediator, and government attorney.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's very impressive. That's unusual path. Walk me through how those experiences built the person that's in front of me.
I believe every decision I've made in my career has been intentional. Okay. It had a purpose. It's kind of as we talked about, service is important.
Yeah.
So when I worked as a military police officer, you're enforcing the law. You see things from one point of view. Then as a probation officer, you see things from another point of view because you're supervising individuals, some who are returning citizens from being incarcerated, and you start to have more conversations with them, and you'll hear people say, well, I didn't do it, I just took the deal. And as a probation officer, I didn't always understand that.
Right.
Then once I became a public defender, it started to make more sense because there will be cases where I'm defending a client and we have a very strong case where we can get a not guilty, but to them, I need to go to work. I can't sit in jail and wait to resolve it. So they would take the deal,
Right.
which sometimes is frustrating as their attorney, but also it helped me to understand more of the circumstances behind how are people ending up in these situations. And so when I really intended to stay as a public defender for a while. That was my intention. But my youngest son, he wasn't adjusting well because we moved to Tallahassee for that job. He wasn't adjusting well. My oldest son had just left to go into the military, so now he's without his brother. We moved to another county, and as most parents do, we make a sacrifice for our children.
Absolutely.
So I came back to Orlando, and honestly, just I say favor ain't fair,
Right.
because the opportunity with the labor union just kind of fell in my lap.
Okay.
And it was similar because I'm still representing working class families who in situations where they needed a lawyer, but they can't necessarily afford one individually. But because they were part of the union, they still received those same services. So they were defending them in disciplinary matters. We're defending them, when the Department of Education is looking at taking a teacher's certificate because of an accusation. And so it's a lot of the same of representing individuals who needed help,
Right.
and couldn't necessarily afford the private lawyer, but they needed that same zealous advocate in fighting for them. And so that was what I did for 8 years in the union realm. And I mean, I loved it because it was, again, fighting for working families. It's
Yes.
fighting for people who look like my family growing up.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I really honed a lot of my skills, whether it be negotiating, analyzing, sitting in arbitrations and making arguments. I honed a lot of skills during that time, and it's such a broad area.
Yes.
Labor and employment covers so many things. Your wage and hour. We're talking about your working conditions. We're talking about budgets. Like I said, legislation, everything that we're looking at. So for me, it's always been intentional. And then when I knew I wanted to start on this path towards being a judge, I knew I needed to be back in the courtroom, or that was
Okay.
some feedback I received. So that's where I transitioned into family law, which put me in court
Okay.
quite a bit. And so it was very intentional choices
Okay.
to help me to be well rounded. Because as I said earlier, you don't pick which area
Yeah.
you're going to go into. But now I've touched all of those
All the
areas.
areas.
And so walking in, there's always going to be a learning curve in any new thing you do, but I'm not starting from ground zero.
Right.
So,
Yes, you have a little bit of everywhere, so
yeah.
you can be very balanced. Your military police experience exposed you to a whole nother side of public safety.
Mm-hmm.
How do you reconcile compassion for an individual responsibility for protecting the public?
I I try to take me out of every equation,
Okay.
meaning it's not about me. If I
Okay.
start there, the moment I clock in for any job, whatever it is I'm doing, I have to leave my ego at home. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about me. And so in that situation, whatever I encounter, I'm looking at what's happening here and how did we get here.
Right.
Sometimes you have time to analyze that, and sometimes you don't. Understanding in public safety matters, safety's first. So
Right.
we got to clear the scene, we got to get everything secure, and that wasn't my role. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't my role to make a decision about whether they did it or not. My role was, this is what's presented. This person needs to be taken to jail,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's
that's
it.
where it stops for me. It's not, and letting the process work the way it's intended to work.
You know what I really appreciate, just as an entrepreneur and wearing multiple hats. Um, one day I can have on a chef coat and a chef hat. The next day I can be sitting talking to a person, helping them figure out what's next. You have so many of those same attributes by being well rounded. As a mediator, your job isn't to win, it's to listen, identify what's really driving the conflict, help people move forward towards a resolution. How does that experience prepare you to sit in the middle as a judge?
Some of it is very similar because as a mediator, I'm not advocating for either side.
Okay.
I'm listening to what both sides have to say. The difference as a judge is I also know that the law is in there. The law is
Okay.
a factor in there. So I can hear both sides. And even in mediation, you're listening and you're picking up on context clues for credibility
Okay.
of individuals. And it's similar as a judge. You're going to be listening because part of deciding who's telling the truth is you have to look at credibility factors.
Okay.
What is each side presenting? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very similar in that sense that you're losing that advocate role,
Okay.
which is hard for a lot of lawyers to do because we're so used to you're advocating for one side or the other. But as a mediator, I'm just here to
Mm-hmm.
try to facilitate and help you all reach an agreement. And some of that's the same as a judge because where the parties can reach an agreement, you
Mm-hmm.
always want to encourage them to do that because then they control the outcome.
Yes.
And so a lot of it is similar in that role, but then once we get to the point where the judge has to make a decision, there's that added factor of what's the law in there? And you have to make a decision.
Yes. Can you tell me, and I know it's very strict about what you can and can't say, but can you tell me about a difficult situation, not revealing any confidential information, where both sides were convinced they were right? And how did you navigate
That's every family law
that? Right.
mediation. That's every family law mediation when you come in. This is emotionally charged.
Yes.
And both sides believe they're right. What they want is how it should be. And really, it's allowing them that moment to get the emotion out.
Mm-hmm.
I say, I'll give you a few minutes. Let's go ahead and talk. I'll
Right.
put them in separate rooms. Let's talk. Let me hear the emotional part. And then I honestly look at them and say, well, here you have the opportunity to decide what happens with your family moving forward. Once you go before the judge, whatever they decide, that's what you're stuck with. So even if everything you've said is true,
Mm-hmm.
how would you like to see it work out? And especially if children are involved, for your children, what can you live with?
Okay.
And then we kind of work from there. And a lot of times, once you let people get those feelings out initially, they can kind of come
Mm-hmm.
back and say, okay, well, she let me say it, so she's not on that person's side.
Right.
But they don't see you do the same thing on the other side. Just allowing them to have their moment.
To have their
A lot of
moments.
people just want to feel heard.
Yes, and your resume highlights the years you've worked with 20,000 of workers, from teachers, bus drivers, custodians, nurses, food service. You've worked with so many different workers. What did sitting across the table from everyday working people teach you that law school couldn't?
That every person brings something to the table. I can learn something from every person I sit across from.
Okay.
Because I never walk into a room thinking, one, I'm the smartest person or that I know everything.
Okay.
And so sitting down and just having conversations, especially with those employees from Orange County Public School, you have custodians who were doctors in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
They were high value professionals in other
Mm-hmm.
countries, but they came to the United States, and these are the jobs they were able to get. And just sitting down and talking and learning things from them, and then they do the job every day. They do a
Right.
job that I can't do.
Right.
Like bus drivers, God bless you.
Right.
Being responsible for all of those children and
Mm-hmm.
still trying to focus on the road and the, just the time and everything that's happening. Just driving myself around is stressful.
Right. Let
And imagine
alone.
being responsible for 50 plus kids, but sitting down and talking to them. And that was one of the things that I started doing when we would negotiate with the district, because I think they would just see me as a professional. Like, oh, yeah,
Okay.
it's her job to argue for these people and say they need this, they need that. I started talking less and started letting them, the workers, talk more. And we
Okay.
got so much more done because they can hear from the people. They can feel the emotion of
Right.
how those people feel every day when they're dealing with these things. And then when you add these constraints to them and how it's impacting their day, and
Mm-hmm.
it's powerful. And I would just sit there. There are people I would call right now
Okay.
from those times with the union. A lot of them are helping me with my campaign because they just believe in who I am and what I represent. And I'll call them when something comes up that I don't know.
Right.
Because there are
Yes, it's
things.
that village,
Yes.
and I've talked about this with lots of candidates. In order to get here, we still need that village.
Absolutely.
You represented people's interests as an advocate. A judge cannot be an advocate for one side. How do you make that transition from fighting from being someone's advocate to being just completely neutral?
Well, that's not what we're talking about. The mediation helps.
Yes.
Being a mediator helps because that's not my role.
Right.
I'm really listening, and sometimes I have to catch myself thinking through the legality of what they're saying and how I would probably
Mm-hmm.
resolve it. And I just remember and get back to asking them, how would you like for this to be resolved? What can you live with? And so I'm not advocating for them. I'm really just listening to what they're
Mm-hmm.
presenting, what information they put forward. And the same thing when I do arbitrations. What
Yes.
legal argument are you putting forward? Are you supporting your position?
Mm-hmm. Why do you feel like it's a change that's needed from the person that's sitting in that seat now to you?
Um, I think when you come into court, you deserve to be treated with respect.
Okay.
When you walk in, I think the lawyers work really hard for their
Okay.
clients, and so when they come in, they deserve to be treated with respect, and they
Okay.
deserve for you to respect the work that they put in.
Okay.
So if they're bringing something to you that they negotiated for their client, it's not my role to decide there may be something better. Their client is happy with that. That's the work that they've done. And so honoring the work that they're doing
Okay.
and really just showing up, being prepared and just being as efficient as possible.
Okay. So your professional network includes women lawyers, black lawyers, the Orange County Bar, national legal organizations. Why has building relationships across different parts of your profession matter to you?
Because the world we live in,
Yes.
like we're just a hodgepodge of people.
Uh-huh.
Not even just here in Central Florida. Again, I told you I came from Stark, Florida. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very different culture there than what I have here. But I can go to either one of those environments.
Okay.
And I'm comfortable, I fit in, and I acclimate. And it's not me pretending to be something I'm not. It's all a part of who I
Okay.
am. And so just speaking with all those organizations and being a part of all those organizations and blending them all together, it's just a part of it. It's one, it helps with your growth.
Yes.
Because you got to be willing to learn.
Yes.
And grow in areas. And it also just exposes you to so much more that, our world is tiny, even though we think, we've seen it all. We feel like we've seen it all, and then we see something else, and like, oh my goodness.
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. I know it takes a team. We have to forever be students, and to be open. I rely on my team so heavily. Who are the people who have shaped you professionally? Not necessarily people that are endorsing you, but mentors who correct you, challenge you, and help you prepare for this moment.
Um, so I have my mentor back home.
Okay.
She's the vice mayor. She was actually the first black female mayor for Stark. And so she's known me my entire life. Like, she's been a part of my family my entire life. And so she's one of those people I can pick up the phone and call when something's going on. And she's run for office several times, so she can help me navigate that. And then I have my group of lawyer friends that are here. If they see something, they're going to call me and say, hey, stand up straight, or hey, do this. Hey, maybe you should talk about this more. Hey, talk about you more.
Right.
That was something I had to learn during this process, because that's not who I am naturally. It's not what I've done. I've always kind of been in the background, just getting the work done, making sure the job is getting done, not out in front. And so I have a very tight knit group. It's small but mighty.
Okay.
I have my best friend from childhood who, people see her a lot of time on the campaign trail. She comes in from Tallahassee to help me.
Okay.
And she's from Start too. So she knows me from way back, and she's gonna give it to me raw every time.
Okay. So when she gives you something raw and you don't want to hear it, what's your first response to that?
Because I know she's saying it out of love, I receive it.
Okay.
Even in that moment, I might say, I hear what you're saying, but give me a moment.
Okay.
Give me a moment to deal with that. But I'm pretty level headed. Okay. And I actually do take feedback well from people who, especially from people who I value and trust. Okay. Because I know they're coming to me from a place of love. Mm-hmm. And so it causes me to stop and really hear what they're saying and ask questions. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm perfect and I always respond the right way to them, but they're my safe place that even if I say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but let me say this, let me have this moment. They'll let me have that moment, and then they'll say, okay, yeah, but you're still wrong. And I can receive that.
If someone who supported your campaign appeared before you, what protects the opposing party from wondering whether, this is a relationship matter or you're going to do the right thing?
Well, I'm always going to do the right thing. Okay. And someone who's worked on my campaign, depending on what they are there for, if they are there, let's say if it's criminal court and they're there and they've done something wrong, they're probably not going to want to appear before me, because one of the things that I do, like the people in my circle, we're about accountability. Okay. We're not here, following up and encouraging you to do some things that you shouldn't be doing. Right. Accountability matters. Yes. And I'm probably going to be your toughest critic. And so they're probably going to want another judge for that reason. Yes. Because I know you know better. But however, if we're there, I'm looking at the facts of the case, what does the law say, and we're going to make the decision as is, because accountability means something. A lot.
I like that, accountability. So there are 3 candidates asking for votes for this seat. Yes. Without discussing either of them, what part of your experience do you believe most distinguishes you for the seat?
think it's my diverse background. Like I said, um, I've done work in all the areas of the law in which I could be assigned, and so that diverse background again gives me a leg up, and it helps me to understand how all the things are intertwined. Like I said earlier, criminal court, how it impacts families, and so I think that's what sets me apart from the others because we don't pick which area we're going to be in. Where that chief judge puts you, so you may have 25 years of experience in civil, but if they put you in criminal,
you're there.
Yeah, that's where you are. Yeah.
What's an area of law where you have less experience, and how would you prepare yourself if assigned to that division?
I think the area that I have the least experience in is probate.
Okay.
And I have done probate matters. I do a lot of probate work now still with legal aid.
Okay.
And part of doing it and continuing to do it now is continuing to learn things.
Okay.
I'm big on preparation and how best can I prepare so that I'm ready.
Okay.
When the opportunity presents itself. So if I know that's an area for me, that's my weak area. Those are the type of cases I take on, and then I reach out to people while I can right now who are helping me and teaching me things about that area so that I can get better at it. I don't just sit and say, "Man, I hope they don't put me in probate." No, I'm working on it now, in anticipation, just in case, and that's just my personality and how I do things.
Could you tell me about a time where you got something wrong and I know this is like I can give you a list of things I gotta.
Just one.
Could you give just one thing that you got something wrong and what did you learn from it?
So I think the one that sticks out to me is when I think about when I first became the chief negotiator for the classified union. I felt like I had to prove something. Because I was young, I didn't have a lot of experience, but they chose me, and so I just kept trying to do everything myself, do it myself, do it myself. And I think I told you what I later learned was there was more value in letting these individuals speak for themselves, not trying to prep them and say, well, maybe you should say it this way. I was trying to make, legalize it.
Right.
Go in here and speak legalese to people. And what I realized is we weren't really getting anywhere with that. And so just sitting back and some of that was feedback from people on my team. I had other lawyers that I was managing. Because again, it's a very big union. At that time, the classified union was 8,000 members. One lawyer cannot handle that. So I had a team and we would have a meeting and they would say, well, what if we start giving them some real life experiences, let them speak a little bit. And I was like, what do you think they would be ready? And we just started working with them and getting them more comfortable because they had never done that. So that was a time where just trying to do it myself. Wow.
That's one of my things that I learn a lot. I still have to be pinched. It's like, hey, rely back to the team. You're not here by yourself. But it's easy to think that you're the only one that can do the job. Right. When you have such a large authority and responsibility. How do you stay humble through that?
I mean, when you've done enough things wrong,
yes, it humbles
it'll
you, right?
humble you, right? And so I think I just learned over time in life. You don't. I won't sit here and say I've always been this humble individual. I would say probably from age 30 on.
Okay.
Life is just changing, especially once you hit 40.
You haven't hit 40 yet.
I am 48.
Okay.
I am 48 years old. Yes, I am 48. And so just life will humble you. And you have to decide, how am I going to deal with that? And so I messed that up. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes we think if we mess up, oh my goodness, the world's going to stop. And so I just learned that over time, not to take myself so seriously. And it's just not.
So I'm going to tell you, I love your campaign phrase, justice with experience, fairness with heart. Your campaign talks about fairness with heart. Some people hear compassionate judge, and worry that means being soft. Can a judge be compassionate and still impose serious consequences?
Absolutely. That's my children.
Okay.
Absolutely. I will sit there and allow them to explain it all the way through. And sometimes, you feel a little bad for them, but then the consequences are still the same. One thing in teachers is accountability.
Yes.
There are consequences for our choices in life.
Yes.
And so what that really means is the compassion piece is I can hear what you're saying and not ridicule you for it. I don't have to demean you and talk down to you. I can hear and maybe even offer a level of empathy, but again, the consequences are what they are. That's not necessarily a factor. Now it's what mitigating factors your attorney putting forward that may be things that I can look at, but just because I empathize doesn't mean you're not going to jail.
Right.
You know,
you
like,
did the
let's
crime.
be clear. Let's be clear about that. Yeah.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
You know, what does dignity look like when you're ruling against someone?
Well, it's what I just said. I don't have to ridicule you.
Okay.
Most people, when they come into court, especially criminal court, most criminals are remorseful.
Okay.
You know, most. Now, there's always going to be exceptions. They already know I messed up. I've disappointed my family. I've disappointed those who believe in me. They don't need me as the judge reiterating that to them.
Right.
That you're a disappointment. You did this. And you did. No, they just need me to hear. They need to hear from me. All right. The jury has found you guilty of this. This is your sentence. That's my role.
Right.
It's not my role to parent you and give you a lecture. And so that's the dignity piece. I don't have to keep beating you down.
I like that. Yeah. What would attorneys who worked against you say about you?
They'll say I'm tough but fair.
Okay.
Professional at all times. We can agree to disagree, and you may see us in court and think we are mortal enemies based on how we advocate for our sides, because that's our job.
Right.
But then you may see us later at lunch. We might have lunch later because it's not personal what we're doing. What we're doing in that moment is our job, and we're both hopefully doing it well. Yes. Fighting on behalf of our clients. But it's never personal. I'm not gonna call you names. I'm not gonna talk about you when we leave court.
Okay.
Because we all work really hard as attorneys, and for the most part, any attorney I've gone against, they've been very prepared, and they've given me a run for my money in court, and I would think they would say the same about me. But when we leave court, I'm like, okay, that person's cool.
Yes, but we did our job.
We did our job. Yeah.
Right. So for someone that has not decided who they're going to vote for, if you were to look into that camera and you would say, hey, vote for me, vote for Temika Hampton-Johnson, because what would that be?
I would say vote for Temika Hampton-Johnson because my overall background and experience and the diverse background that I have makes me the most qualified candidate. I have the right temperament. What you see is what you get with me. A lot of times I'm not the polished speaker. I'm not showing up and giving you polished answers. I'm giving you real. And honestly, that I believe makes me different from others. And I believe that's what people want when they come into court. They want to feel like they're heard, people can understand, and maybe even sometimes relate to what's happening, and that they're going to be treated with dignity and respect. Every person you talk to will tell you, no matter what job I've done, whether it's probation, whether it's military police, they were still treated with dignity and respect, even in me doing those jobs. And so I think that's what sets me apart. That's why I would ask that you vote for me. It's easy to remember. My group is in group 1. That doesn't mean anything as far as, geographically. If you live in Orange or Osceola County, anywhere in those 2 counties, no matter your party affiliation, I will be on your ballot. Group 1 is the first race up. My name is the first one up. So it's an easy way to remember it. Temika Hampton-Johnson, number 1 in group 1.
Listen, you all heard it right here. This is the Tailgate candidate interview. Listen, I'm so thankful that you've taken this time to sit down with me. It's great to have this real conversation. You all, the Tailgate continues, okay? We want to give again a thank you to Southern Style Barbecue that is making this possible. Stick around because we have one more to go for today, and I want you all to be informed. This is the time to use your voice to make sure our communities are strong. Again, any last words before we leave out?
Get out to vote. We're looking at the numbers. We need people to get out to vote. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I would love to have you vote for me. Even if you don't vote for me, I want you to get out and vote the entire ballot. Be an informed voter. Vote the entire ballot. Bring a friend with you. Bring your neighbors with you. Let's get these numbers up.
You heard it right here. Y'all stay tuned. We have one more today.